I could not get pregnant for a long time. At first, my husband and I didn't want children because we wanted to live for ourselves, and afterwards, it didn't work. And nobody knew why. It seems and all the tests were good, that I and my husband, but 2 years tried, and all to no avail. My husband began to say that without children a family is not a family, and he needs children. He needs them so much that he doesn't even care about me anymore. One day the word divorce sounded, and I got depressed. I started staying out late at night at work. I was afraid to go home. I didn't want to see my husband, because I was constantly afraid that now he would tell me that he was leaving, and after that I would go crazy. This feeling materialized in my head every time, as soon as the girls from the neighboring department began to noisily and cheerfully gather in the evening home, and made me stare at the monitor and frantically look for some work for the evening to stay here and not go to his apartment. My apartment slowly flowed into my workplace in the form of books, my favorite cup, a warm plaid, and even a teddy bear kept since childhood, which now lived in my top drawer of my desk. That's also where I now kept my bottle of cognac at work. I initially added it to my coffee on cold winter days, but soon realized that my coffee with cognac was becoming less and less coffee and more cognac. The relationship with my husband was almost non-existent. Rarely when we met at home in the evenings. Mostly we saw each other only on weekends. And that I tried to keep conversations to a minimum, or diverted his attention to some interesting programs, or immediately turned on a movie. I had it once a month ago barely. He said that he wanted to talk to me. I lightning where only remained such a reaction in the exhausted body, came up to him and closed his mouth with a kiss. Considering that we didn't have sex very often now either, this sudden impulse was enough to make both of us not want to talk anymore. Everything happened right on the floor, impulsively, passionately, as it was probably only in the early years of our marriage, when we were just living for ourselves. But after that evening of lovemaking, I somehow withdrew even more into myself and began avoiding my husband with redoubled vigor. I went to work, sat there in the evenings, drinking my coffee, though almost without cognac bottle was running out, and I could not go to buy a new one, so greedily saved the rest, and waited for the end, because it should have come already after all. And time went on, the months flowed one after another, and now winter was at the very edge, and one day it happened. Yes, one day it happened. My husband called me right in the middle of the working day on my cell phone and said that since he was already desperate to see me at home, today he will come to pick me up at work in the office, and that I dare not go anywhere without him. Or else. He didn't finish, but I didn't need to hear the end of the sentence. My hand automatically reached for the drawer where the cognac was hidden, and I, not paying attention to the astonished colleagues, poured myself half a cup of dark drink and drank it in one go. And then I ran to the toilet, because I hadn't eaten since the morning, and after such an amount of alcohol on an empty stomach, I immediately turned inside out. I came back to the place wet, disheveled, and green. I sat down and realized that I didn't know how to live anymore, and that I didn't have the strength to run away from the inevitable. No matter how much I hid, no matter how much I buried myself in the sand, a heavy excavator with an iron bucket finally reached me to dig up my life from the roots, take it to the nearest garbage heap, and throw it away. These were the thoughts that filled my mind with beautiful three-dimensional pictures until the end of my work shift. At 1800, the girls in the next room rustled papers, chirped in different voices, and reached for the exit. Birds! Migratory, brightly colored birds, believing that it could always be spring outside. I was the only one who knew that there would be no more spring. I thought, would he tell me right now that he was leaving? Or would he spend 2 hours preparing for this message? Or maybe he'll come with his things already. With his own or with mine. Yes, he'll have his things in his hands. He'll probably just offer me to move in with my mom while he trades our apartment. After such detached and doomed reflections, the appearance on the doorstep of my husband with a large bag in his hands did not surprise me at all. I silently stood up, smoothed my hair, put on my jacket, and silently walked to the exit. I don't know what came over me, but from the threshold I pushed my husband away and rushed back into the office to my desk, pulled a teddy bear out of the drawer, clutched it to me as a lost child clutches a parent's toy to feel at least some sense of not being alone in a crowd of strangers, and after that I went out into the corridor and, raising my head, with a straightened back, went to the elevator. I really felt lost, clinging to the beacons that gave me memories of spring and happiness. We got in the car and drove off. At some point I realized that this road didn't lead to my parents' house, and only then did I turn to my husband in surprise. "We are going to the doctor," answering my silent question, said my husband. "You have an appointment at the antenatal clinic. The appointment is in half an hour. You will have time to wash up and come to your senses in the bag towel and slippers. By the way, how are you feeling today?" It was such an unexpected question from my husband, who, as it seemed to me, had long been indifferent to me and did not need me, that I did not find what to say. I shrank into a ball and was afraid to turn my face in his direction the rest of the way. The clinic was nice and quiet, plain pastel walls, unhurried girls in blue coats, flowers on the windows in the corridor. The doctor was pleasant too. This not young man smiled at me, asked me not to be nervous, and offered to go behind a screen so I could undress while he looked at all the documents and tests my husband had given him upon entering the office. He rustled papers and certificates for a long time and fiddled with a pen, making some marks in his notebook, and I stood behind the screen half undressed and was afraid to go out and sit in the chair. I didn't understand why my husband had organized this farce. He had clearly made me realize that if there were no children, there was nothing. And now, instead of finally letting me go and let me die in peace, he dragged me to this clinic, where I was immediately taken to the laboratory, and for a long time they pricked my hands with needles, trying to pump out at least some blood from me. But the blood did not flow, and my head, on the contrary, spreading, spinning, and losing the world around me. He could have just let me go, but he dragged me here, and now he had me standing behind a screen, hesitantly stepping from foot to foot. I hadn't even had lunch today, I thought, and a wave of nausea rolled over me at once. I jerked and clamped my hands over my mouth, not knowing where to go. "The sink is right behind you," the doctor said very calmly without raising his head. "Wash your face, calm down, and sit down in the chair. I need to look at you." "Well, your tests are here." "Your husband was right. You really have everything great, but still we need an examination too." Are you ready? Yes, I whimpered and slowly climbed into the examination chair, as if I had entered a torture chamber. The doctor's hands were attentive and calm, no sudden movements, no pain. Just peace and quiet. I started to fall asleep. I woke up only when he jingled the instruments and told me that I could get dressed and sit down at his table. My legs were shaking and shaking, my head was in a fog. I wanted to sleep and sleep. Apparently, the stress had receded, leaving behind only apathy, and it is true, it is impossible to live in nervous tension all the time. No human body can withstand it. You don't need to be nervous anymore. Pregnancy is proceeding normally, blood is good, uterine tone is normal. I will write you a referral for an ultrasound and some more tests, but it is unlikely to change the overall picture. But after you're done, you'll come see me again, okay? Okay. I shook my head, not fully understanding what he was telling me, because I couldn't be pregnant, and he was obviously confused about something. And to my husband, into whose hands he was handing me over, he was also saying something completely wrong, and my husband was shaking his hand and smiling as if he had won a prize, while he wanted to kick me out and divorce me. Why did the doctor come up with all this? Is he trying to save me? But it won't help me, because in 2 months my belly won't grow and my husband will realize everything, and he will kick me out anyway and accuse the doctor of lying, and everyone will feel bad. I need a drink, something strong, and to fall asleep and never wake up again, because my husband doesn't love me. I guess that was the last thing I thought, because everything became very dark and scary. My husband's frightened face flashed in the distance, and I don't remember anything else. I woke up at home. I was surrounded by butterflies, which my husband and I had hung on the chandelier when we were still happy and cheerful. We folded them out of colorful paper and called them different funny names, and then hung them on colored satin ribbons. Well, the happiness is gone, but the butterflies are still flying, fluttering funny paper wings in the air, fluttering, flying. They're waiting for something too. Summer, I guess. Butterflies always wait for summer, because they live only for it. My husband's voice was terribly caring and tender. Something's wrong. This man doesn't love me. He's up to something, I said to myself, trying to keep within the confines of the story of the unhappy abandoned wife and despot husband that suited me, but the intonation of his voice had already done its work, and I wanted to cry and to be held and pitied like a child. Tears came to my eyes, and I clenched my eyelids tighter so they wouldn't leak out, and answered as detachedly as possible. The doctor was there, and he said I was expecting a baby. That's nonsense. We know that there are no miracles in the world, I said, and turned my face to the wall. Tears were already running down my cheeks, and I could only try not to shake with sobs, not to give away my condition. It wasn't a dream. We were really having a baby. I felt my husband's hand stroking my hair, and I gave in. I cried in my voice, pouring out in torrents all the pain and all the fears that had tormented me so much these past months. I heard him whispering words of comfort to me, stroking me and kissing me on the top of my head, and suddenly I began to complain to him, the way children complain, wailing and whimpering, telling him how bad I was, how I didn't want to go home, because he had decided to divorce me and leave me, since I couldn't bear him a child. Why would you say that? I heard in my husband's voice absolutely genuine notes of surprise and confusion, and I faltered. You told me yourself that a family without children is not a family, and then you said something about divorce. I'm not deaf, I heard you. My husband stopped hugging me, turned away, sat down on the bed, and shrank back. For 3 months I could not understand what happened. She began to avoid me, all the time some orders, at work until night sits, does not pick up the phone, alcohol from her in the evening smells. I almost had to drag her to bed by force. He grinned wickedly and turned to me. He thought that she had gotten herself a man at work. He came in the evenings, watched all your people leave, tried to track you down, hid around the corner like a spy, but you were still gone. I wondered who else was there, who you spent your evenings with. For these months I've learned all your colleagues, who goes out with whom, who leaves in what car, who meets whom. And you always went out alone. I never found out who kept you warm and sang songs at work this winter. You even dragged your bear there, a present from Mom. Wait. I suddenly felt so guilty and confused, as if I had done something that could not be corrected, as if what is important and necessary to me now will melt without a trace, and I will not be able to change anything. And it made everything inside cold and clenched into a sticky lump. Wait, you said. No children, and also about divorce, and I thought that you were leaving me because of the children, that is, because of their absence. We were lying on the bed. My husband hugged me by the shoulders and warmed my belly with his palm, in which very soon someone will be moving and tapping his heels on the barrier that does not let him into the adult world, from which every now and then voices are heard and reciprocal shocks are felt, and colored butterflies were flying above us. They had already started summer, and they had to have time to fly, breathe, and love, just like the people who were lying there now and looking up at them. I'm pregnant. I've been waiting for this.